The twin suns of Xeraxis Prime shimmered above the ivory spires of the capital, casting long golden shadows on the marbled procession below. Music drifted through the air, strange, high-pitched chords vibrating against the bones of every listener, as the royal wedding commenced, watched by millions across the empire. But beneath the pomp and pageantry, no joy stirred in Zalari's chest. Her ceremonial robe clung to her like a shroud. The heavy crystal veil, meant to mask her imperfections, refracted her solemn expression into a kaleidoscope of sorrow. The geneticists had tried, tweaking, scraping, smoothing, but even the empire's most advanced biosculptors couldn't turn her into what the people wanted. Her mandible was too blunt, her eyes too small, her hue too dull. On Xeraxis, beauty was divinity, and Zalari was unholy. She stood tall regardless, her posture perfect, her breath measured. She'd memorized every step, every turn, every gesture of the ancient ritual. She would not falter. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. Prince Vern waited beneath the ivory arch, his scales polished to a mirror sheen, every inch the image of a god in royal flesh. When his eyes landed on her, he offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the same expression he'd worn since their betrothal, a mixture of tolerance and faint disgust, like a man forced to share a table with a spoiled meal. The marriage was political, a unification of two influential houses. Her intellect, her genetic lineage, her psychic potential, these were valuable. But her face? Her body? An embarrassment. She'd heard the whispers. She could lip-read the courtiers behind their jeweled masks. Still, she married him. The vows echoed across the plaza, ancient words binding two souls not by love, but by decree. When Vern kissed her, it was a mere brushing of lips, his body stiff. The crowd erupted in programmed cheers. That night, she lay alone in the obsidian palace, staring at the ceiling patterns shifting in rhythm with her breathing. Vern didn't come. He never would. Her room, lavish and cold, felt more like a cell than a sanctuary. 2 weeks passed before the true cruelty unfolded. Zalari was summoned to the Grand Hall under the pretense of a security briefing. Instead, a tribunal waited, robed officials, medical officers, and Vern himself standing behind a crystalline podium like a judge from a forgotten age. He did not meet her eyes as the accusations began. Genetic instability, unverified psychic anomalies, suspected contact with proscribed artifacts. Zalari stood in stunned silence as her husband read a fabricated diagnostic report with clinical detachment. The documents alleged she posed a risk to the genetic sanctity of the royal bloodline. She recognized the language. She'd written half of it herself during her research years. Now it was twisted, reworded to paint her as a ticking bomb. "This is absurd," she whispered, stepping forward. But Vern raised a hand. "We have ruled with mercy," he said smoothly, his voice carrying for the benefit of the holocams. "You will not be executed. You will be relocated for study. For safety." "No trial?" she asked, stunned. "No. It is decided." The guards didn't drag her away. That would have looked bad. They simply stepped forward, calm and armored, and escorted her through silent corridors until she was placed into an unmarked transport ship. She wasn't given time to pack. Her destination was a Class 7 moon orbiting the gas giant Calores 2, barely inhabitable, its surface scorched by solar winds and studded with black glass. No outposts. No orbiting satellites. Just barren rock and abandoned survey stations. The craft dropped her with a single crate of rations, no shelter, no weapons. She watched the ship vanish into the clouds, the silence crushing in around her like the vacuum of space. At first, she didn't cry. She simply sat for hours, unmoving, calculating her odds. The wind was constant. The oxygen thin. Temperature dropped every rotation. She would die here. That was the intent. And yet, some stubborn core inside her refused. She started walking. In time, she found a collapsed station, steel bones poking through layers of volcanic ash. It wasn't shelter, but it was something. She scavenged, pulling circuits from dead consoles, reactivating faded screens, repairing what she could. Her fingers bled. Her body shivered. Nights brought acidic frost, days, a suffocating dry heat. But her mind, sharp, defiant, never dulled. She stopped measuring time in days and started measuring it in heartbeats. 1 heartbeat, secure the power core. 100, salvage thermal plates. Thousands, rebuild the signal beacon. She didn't hope for rescue. The Empire would never allow it. But survival was a rebellion in itself. Then the stars shifted. At first, she thought it a hallucination, an odd glint against the night sky, moving against the celestial rhythm. But it grew closer, brighter, controlled. A ship. Human. The landing was quiet. A sleek black vessel touched down half a kilometer away, kicking up plumes of fine dust. Zalari waited, crouched near the ruins, hands trembling not from fear, but the strange jolt of unfamiliar hope. The figure that emerged wore a pressurized suit, helmet reflecting the dim sunlight. Humanoid. 2 legs, 2 arms. Deliberate movements. It advanced slowly, scanning, unaware it was being watched. She approached with calculated caution, a shard of rebar gripped tightly in her hand. When he turned, he froze. For a moment, they simply stared. His voice, when it came through the translator, was surprisingly soft. "Oh, didn't expect anyone out here." She didn't answer. Couldn't. He raised his hands. "Easy. I'm not armed." The pause. "I'm Elias. Commander Elias Shaw, Terran Exploration Corps. You? Not listed on any colonies in this sector." Still, she said nothing. Her throat ached. She hadn't spoken in weeks. Elias knelt slowly, placing a small case on the ground. It opened to reveal nutrient packets and water capsules. "I'm not here to hurt you. Just exploring." Finally, her voice came, cracked but steady. "This is a prison." He blinked. "You're a prisoner?" She nodded once. He hesitated, glancing at the wreckage around her. "Did someone do this to you?" "Yes." Her answer held centuries of weight. He exhaled, kneeling again, not out of reverence, but to be at eye level. "Well, that's over now." She stared at him, uncomprehending. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, offering a hand, "you're not staying here alone." And something deep inside her, a part long buried, flared to life. A single spark. The human ship was warmer than any place Solari had known in years. She sat rigid in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in a thermal blanket while Elias navigated low orbit. Her eyes traced every surface, polished panels, flickering monitors, soft synthetic light. It was all so foreign, clean, smooth, built not to impress but to function, to care for the ones inside it. Elias moved with the ease of someone who'd lived among stars. His suit hung from a hook, and beneath it, his clothing was simple and creased with use. No jewelry. No shimmering robes. He glanced at her now and then but didn't push questions. She appreciated the silence more than she expected. 2 hours passed before she spoke again. "Why are you here?" He looked up from the console. "Deep Space Recon. We map unregistered moons, scan for anomalies, maybe stumble into something interesting." "Guess I just did." Her gaze drifted to the window. The moon's surface looked even more lifeless from above. She'd spent nearly a year there. A quiet death sentence in a tomb of ash. "They left me to die," she murmured. "I figured," Elias said gently. "No rescue beacon. No logs." Zalari shifted, fingers curling under the blanket. "I was a wife. A royal. He accused me of contamination. Unfit genetics. My appearance offended him. That's all it took." Elias didn't react with outrage or pity, just a quiet, genuine attentiveness that unsettled her more than scorn would have. "You don't have to tell me more," he said. But she wanted to. It surprised her. "I used to design genetic systems. Neural frameworks. I've published papers on hybrid interface cognition before I was repurposed for marriage. After I was exiled, I modified an old console to receive scattered telemetry. I read every unshielded data burst for months. No one searched for me." He exhaled, long and slow. "People like that think power gives them the right to erase someone." "No," she corrected him. "They know it does." The words lingered, neither of them breaking the silence. Finally, Elias stood, retrieved a nutrient bar from the supply rack, and handed it to her. "I don't know much about your world," he said, "but I know what it's like to survive someone who thought they owned you." Her hand paused halfway to her mouth. She studied him, something in his voice striking deeper than she liked. "You've been abandoned too?" He smiled with one side of his mouth. "Not by royalty. Just by command." "Long story." For the first time since she'd met him, her lips quirked slightly. "Then we have that in common." Over the next several days, Zalari and Elias remained in orbit, repairing the ship's mapping relay and updating his star charts. She insisted on helping. Her hands were clumsy at first, but her memory was sharp. She learned fast. Faster than he expected. Elias watched as she stripped ancient circuits and rewired them using human tech. She modified diagnostic code to run 6 times faster. She even reprogrammed a microdrone to sweep the hull for microfractures while he was asleep. She didn't say she was doing it to earn her place. She didn't need to. It was how she'd survived, working, adapting, becoming useful until usefulness became armor. Still, Elias didn't treat her like a project. When she worked late into the ship's artificial night, he'd bring her tea. When she grew frustrated, he'd simply sit nearby, tools in hand, and wait. "You're not what I expected," she admitted one evening. "Neither are you," he replied. "I've read hundreds of first contact logs. Half of them would have categorized you as a threat." Her head tilted. "And the other half?" "A tragic footnote." She laughed then, a sharp, unpolished sound, but it was real. He leaned back, arms crossed. "You're a hell of a lot more than that." They stayed in orbit longer than protocol allowed. Elias filed a false report, claiming navigation issues. The mission was on the edge of Terran jurisdiction, and enforcement was lax. Still, time wasn't unlimited. Eventually he'd have to report back. She asked him what Earth was like. He painted it in sensory fragments: rivers that sang in spring, cities that never slept, foods that clung to your fingers, laughter that came from the belly. She drank it all in like it was scripture. One night, while scanning the moon for power fluctuations, Zalari detected something unusual. A low-frequency signal buried beneath layers of static. They followed it, descending once more to the desolate surface. Near one of the collapsed stations she'd once scavenged, Elias helped her dig. Beneath cracked basalt and iron roots, they unearthed a sealed chamber. It wasn't Zaraxian tech. Inside were walls inscribed with glyphs older than her species. In the center, a pulsing crystal sat in a containment ring, humming with dormant energy. The interface responded to Zalari's touch, not Elias's. "I've seen references to this kind of system," she murmured. "The ancients. Precursor species, long extinct. My people call them myth. But this isn't myth." The crystal surged. She staggered back, clutching her skull as data flooded her mind. Visions of stars collapsing, civilizations crumbling, warnings encoded in sensory matrices beyond language. Elias caught her before she fell. "Zalari!" She blinked rapidly, sweat beading down her temples. "It showed me everything." Later, aboard the ship, she collapsed in the med bay and slept for 16 hours straight. When she awoke, she asked for data access. She worked for another 40. She translated the warnings, sketched designs, cross-referenced human databanks with her own reconstructed archives. What she found horrified her. Zaraxus Prime's planetary core, its stabilizer array, was not of Zaraxian origin. It was ancient tech. Buried. Misunderstood. Repurposed. And dangerously unstable. Her people's leaders knew. They had ignored it. "Let me get this straight," Elias said, pacing. "Your entire planet is sitting on a ticking time bomb, and your royal house has been using it as, what? Energy infrastructure?" She nodded grimly. "And suppressing the information. Anyone who uncovers fragments disappears. I suspect that's why they targeted me. I was getting too close." Elias stared at her. "That's not just corruption. That's apocalyptic. I have to go back." Her voice was calm, but final. Elias sat across from her. "Zalari, if what you're saying is true, going back could get you killed. They already tried. He watched her for a long time, weighing her words. You think they'll listen now? No, she said. But the people will. She tapped the crystal, now housed in a containment unit. This is more than a relic. It's proof. And it responds to me. That means something. And me? He asked. Where do I fit in? She looked at him, and her voice was soft when she answered. You gave me a reason to stand again. I want you with me, but not as protection. As a witness. Elias hesitated. Then he nodded. Then we do it together. They spent the next 5 days preparing. Zalari designed a hybrid transmission relay using both human and ancient tech. With it, she could bypass royal firewalls and broadcast directly to the public. They plotted a course toward Zaraxus Prime. She stood in the viewport, watching the stars blur into a single line of light, her reflection barely visible against the dark. Once discarded, now ascending. Behind her, Elias approached. Are you ready? He asked. No, she said honestly. But I'm going anyway. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. The stars surrounding Zaraxus Prime shimmered like glass splinters against the dark. As the human vessel pierced through the outer defense grid, Zalari adjusted the signal booster she had embedded into the ship's comms relay. No alarms triggered. Her codes still worked. Her fingerprints were still buried deep in the Empire's infrastructure. They were inside. From orbit, the capital glowed with artificial serenity, massive structures of ivory and obsidian coiling around the core like a crowned serpent. Beneath the gleam, rot festered. Secrets slept in the crust, waiting to shatter the illusion. Zalari stood at the console, fingers dancing over the holographic controls. Elias sat beside her, quiet, his knuckles white on the armrest. They'd rehearsed this. Timing mattered. Finalizing uplink, she said. You're still good with flying straight into the palace airspace? Suicidally confident, Elias muttered. Let's hope they're too arrogant to react fast. They are. She didn't smile. There was no pleasure in this. Just purpose. The transmission began broadcasting the moment they crossed into the upper atmosphere. Zalari's face, unfiltered and unmasked, appeared across the Empire, every home, every public plaza, every citizen's private display. She didn't open with a plea. She opened with a truth. I am Zalari of House Vel, once named consort to Prince Verne. I speak not as a wife nor as a traitor, but as a scientist, a daughter, and a witness. The message was short, just under 90 seconds. It included crystal-verified readings of the ancient stabilizer, its rising resonance frequency, and the looming threat it posed. A decay cascade already beginning in the planet's mantle. She explained the royal suppression, the falsified diagnostics, the systematic silencing of those who got too close. Then she ended with a single sentence. Your silence will not save you. But your voice might. Elias turned the ship toward the palace spires as the signal looped. Already, chaos bloomed below them. Fighters scrambled too late, unsure whether this was war or treason. Public terminals lit with her face. Civilians spilled into the streets, shouting her name. The ship shook under the first kinetic barrage. Shields at 40. Elias shouted. They're not holding back. Keep flying. They pierced the outer court's defense ring and descended toward the ceremonial landing garden, an ornamental field surrounded by mirrored towers. It had once hosted their wedding reception. Now it would host something else. The ship landed with a brutal jolt. Elias leapt from the controls and grabbed the containment case. Zalari followed, her body wrapped in a pressure-shielded cloak. Her veins hummed with adrenaline and clarity. Royal guards stormed the perimeter within minutes. But they didn't open fire. They hesitated. Zalari stepped forward, lifting the crystal high. It responds to me, she shouted, her voice carried by every drone now linked to her network. It chose me. Not your prince. Not your council. Me. The crowd behind the palace gates was growing. Staff, civilians, junior officers, even nobles. The outer barriers failed to hold them back. The tide was changing faster than the security protocol could adapt. A familiar figure emerged from the palace steps. Verne, clad in a ceremonial robe, flanked by the High Regent and 2 command elites. His expression was unreadable. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. "I know," she replied. "But the dead don't always stay buried. You're undermining the balance. The order. I'm revealing the truth. If you strike me down now, everyone watching will know what you are." Vern's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the hovering drones, the data still playing. The people saw her, heard her, believed her. The High Regent whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. Zalari took a slow step forward. "You buried me because I didn't fit your image. You left me to rot while you polished your empire. But rot doesn't vanish. It spreads. And now it's reached your throne." Vern looked directly at her. For the first time, his confidence cracked. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said, voice low. "I do now." With a signal pulse, she activated the resonance stabilizer within the crystal. The interface projected ancient star maps and system schematics into the air. Data streamed in cascading glyphs, matching the core's current frequency. A warning. Zaraxus Prime had months. At most. Her voice rang clear. "You can kill me. You can destroy the evidence. But this signal has already jumped to 100 civilian relays. The truth is out. And the truth spreads faster than fire." A murmur moved through the soldiers. Some lowered their weapons. One even dropped his entirely. Vern's hand trembled at his side. "You don't belong here anymore," he said, voice brittle. Zalari took another step closer. "Then neither do you." The palace doors creaked open behind him. And out stepped someone she hadn't expected, Chancellor Orion, once her mentor before her forced marriage. His face was gaunt, but his eyes sharp. "She speaks true," Orion announced. "I've seen the buried readings. I've seen the decay rate. The core will collapse. You've all felt the tremors." Gasps followed his words. Vern turned in disbelief. "You were sworn." "I was," Orion said. "To science. Not to lies." The silence that followed was the beginning of an ending. Zalari exhaled. The next hours moved in a blur. Vern was taken into custody by dissenting officers. The High Regent vanished into the corridors. Zalari was ushered into a secure chamber where senior scientists and system analysts pored over her data. Elias never left her side. She declined a title. Declined a crown. "I didn't return to rule," she told the council. "I came to repair." Rebuilding would take years. The core would need to be stabilized using the ancient knowledge she alone could interface with. The people would need time to trust again. But the revolution had begun, not with blood, but with truth. On the third night, Zalari stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Fires flickered in the distance, celebrations, not destruction. Elias joined her, 2 cups in hand. "They want you to lead the planetary council," he said, offering her a drink. "I know. You'll do it?" She stared at the horizon. "Only until the core's stabilized. After that, I want to go." "Go where?" She turned to him, the wind tugging at her cloak. "Anywhere. Everywhere. I want to learn again. I want to build, not rule." He clinked his cup against hers. "Then we go." A quiet moment passed between them, not filled with promises or vows, just the comfort of shared fire. And far below, in the heart of the city, the ancient stabilizer pulsed, no longer a secret, but a symbol. Not of doom, but of a second chance.